woman came up to me and said, I'd like to poison your mind with wrong ideas that appeal to you, though I am not unkind. She looked at me, I looked at something written across her scalp, and these are the words that it faintly said as I tried to call for help. There's only one thing that I know how to do well, and I've often been told that you only can do what you know how to do well, and that's be you. Be what you're like. Be like yourself. And so I'm having a wonderful...
Back to the Atheist Experience. We are live April, good Lord, 4th. Sorry for that slip there. April 4th. I'm your host, Ashley Perrion, and my co-host this week,
Don Baker.
Don Baker, welcome back.
Thanks, it's good to be here.
All right, we are the Atheist Experience. We are sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings which seem to have settled down at Crescent City Beignets on 6th Street. I believe it's 1211 6th Street. It's on a couple blocks west of Lamar. We meet there every Sunday at 11:30, and that goes until basically whenever people start leaving. That's every Sunday. Excuse me if you heard that. I guess I sound a little different today. I have a bad cold today, so if I pass out sometime during the show, just pan over to Don, we'll be okay. Anyway, on Monday nights, we have Godless Gamers. That's every Monday night at 7 o'clock at Russell Glasser's house. If you go to our website, atheist-community.org, we have a link there to, you can email the webmaster, and he can give you information on those type of things, directions, times, and whatnot. We also have a link on our site to just general meetings. Apart from that, our other weekly events, every Thursday night, we have Atheist Happy Hour at Antonio's Tex-Mex, which is on the southbound feeder of I-35, just south of 183. That starts around 7:30 or so, and like I say, that's every Thursday night. Also, we have the Nonprofits Internet Audio Show, which runs every Saturday at atheistnetwork.com. It's a live MP3 stream. It goes from 2:30 to 4, I believe. I don't have the... there it is. It's 2 to 3:30. A little bit scattered today. Next episode is going to be on the 10th. And like I say, that's atheistnetwork.com. That's hosted by Jeff D., Russell Glasser, and usually whoever shows up at their place on that time. So, all right, I believe that is it for our normal announcements. Like I say, again, we're live. It is April 4th, and we have reruns every Tuesday, Channel 10, 4:30 to 6, same time. But if you're watching this on Tuesday, like I say, this is not a live show. Don't call in. So anyway, we're sorry that we started a little bit late today. Apparently the Mormons got our first half hour of our show. It happens about every year. Like I said, we just can't, not too sure exactly what's happening with them, but like I say, they have their big conference out in Utah or something like that, and they preempt us. So, anyway, that's it for announcements. I'd like to welcome back Don Baker, our co-host for the week.
Thank you.
And you're going to be doing some talking about myths.
Yeah, there's quite a few myths associated with Christianity, and it's there's so many of them that it's hard to know where to like start poking. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about the Jesus birth myth, and see what's the real story behind that, and so on, and of course, if you have Jesus as not being a of divine origin, then a lot of Christianity kind of falls on its face. It's a fundamental myth in Christianity, a fundamental tenet.
He must be God incarnate.
Right.
He can't just be a prophet or something like that.
Right. So I'd like to maybe begin here a little with a quote that I found on the web. It says, clearly the Christians have used myths in fabricating the story of Jesus' birth. It is clear to me that the writings of the Christians are a lie, and your fables are not well enough constructed to conceal this monstrous fiction. This is written by a man named Celsus in 178 AD. So apparently this idea that Christianity is based on myths is not a new idea. apparently, let's see, it says here that Celsus was one of the foremost thinkers of his age. His critique of the Christians was so damaging that Christians destroyed every copy of his work they could find. So this birth myth is basically the idea that God comes down and finds this Virgin Mary and more or less impregnates her, and she, as a virgin, bears the child Jesus, and this husband of hers, Joseph, kind of tags along as an extra. Turns out he's important for another myth that didn't quite make the prime time. So, as we like to say, skeptics like to say, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And so, what is the evidence that we have of the virgin birth story? And it basically comes down to the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. It turns out there's really there's no evidence at all of Jesus actually having lived outside of the Bible. So
in terms of physical evidence or other writings to back it up.
Right. There have been some writings, but they've been pretty much scholars believe they're hoaxes and made up after the fact, which turns out to be a fairly common thing. So we have Matthew chapter 1, verse 18, when his mother Mary was espoused to Joseph before they came together, which means before they... Anyway, she was found with the child of the Holy Ghost. So that's the Matthew version, or the important. In Luke, they say it says, "And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb and bring forth a son, and shalt call his name Jesus." Then later it says, "Then Mary said unto the angel, How shall this be, seeing that I know not a man? And the angel answered and said unto her, The Holy Ghost shall come upon thee." So the power of this myth is largely due to these two quotes and
two lines.
There's a little bit more here and there, but basically it's the two Gospels of Matthew and Luke. But let's back up a little bit and examine these in kind of a bigger context. There were sort of two things that were very important in the history of Christianity at this time. One is that there was this covenant with David, King David, and this is back in the Old Testament in Psalms 89. 3 and 4, and then 34 and 37. And the idea here is that God made this big promise to King David that his line, his progeny would reign forever. And this was a very big promise, and unfortunately it was a broken promise. The line of David was broken. He, at some point, let's see, the line of kings ended with Zedekiah, and there were none during the Babylonian captivity. So basically this promise was broken, okay? And this was actually a very big deal to these guys, because, when God makes a promise, he ought to keep it, right? You want to kind of trust the big guy, and how could he possibly be a liar, right? So that's one big thing going on. And the other big thing is that we had Paul, who was kind of the main apostle, the main storyteller about Jesus. In fact, I would think that we wouldn't have the Jesus Christ myths if it weren't for him. He was kind of the opinion that the Christ part of the myth was that we had Christ as sort of an apparition and was purely a spirit being, okay. And at the time they were actually kind of very uncomfortable with this idea that a holy being would actually have a corporal form. That was considered a rather dirty thing, and actually it's this very squeamishness with this dirty human thing is actually the source of a lot of our sexual taboos and so on. So he finally capitulated because he was trying to promote this crucifixion story, right? And if you have a spirit being who's crucified, it's not very compelling. You got to have the blood and guts in order to make people kind of interested in it, and you got to have the suffering and sacrifice in order for it to be compelling.
Yeah, that's what we recognize as suffering.
Right. And if a spirit being is suffering, it's kind of hard to buy into that.
Yeah.
Okay. So also in kind of the related areas here. We have this notion of pious frauds. There were actually it was a pretty common occurrence to come up and spin doctor things and do various things. One thing that they did is called a midrash, which was basically to take an old quotation or an old passage and spin it for the current circumstances. And this was a common occurrence. Another pious fraud was passing off a text as written at an earlier time so that you can prophesize what's happening today, and say, oh, this prophecy came true, when in actuality the text is written in a more modern time.
Okay, so you're saying that they wrote the text
as if it were in the past.
And then dated it.
Right.
1950.
Right. So that's a great way to do that. Another little trick was false accreditation. For example, the Gospels of Luke, Matthew, and so on were supposedly written by the apostles, but in reality they're just attributed to the apostles. So it's been meant to kind of give them extra oomph. So another thing going around is there were tons and tons of myths floating around in Rome at this time. Rome had conquered vast territories and lots of different peoples, and they traded with even more people. And it's a big melting pot at the time, so there was a great mixture of myths and things. And in particular, we have Mithraism, which was a religion that coexisted with Christianity but began much earlier. And we have Mithra was born of a virgin. And his birth is celebrated December 25th, and performed miracles with 12 disciples, held a Last Supper, and was resurrected after 3 days in the spring equinox, and ascended to heaven. Now, does that sound familiar to anybody?
Just vaguely.
Just vaguely familiar. So you know, the more you examine this, the more you look at these myths coming in, you wonder about that. There's Zoroaster, Horus, Krishna, Bacchus, Prometheus, Indra. All of these deities were supposedly born of virgins and shared many other attributes with Jesus. So these are, floating around in the Greek.
A lot of those were centuries before Jesus.
Oh yes. All of these were sort of in existence long before Jesus was claimed to have been born. So this is old stuff. In the Greek myth, Perseus was born of Virgin Diana, who was conceived by the god Zeus, who took the form of a shower of gold. Humans were actually considered of virgin birth as well. We have Romulus, who is the legendary founder of Rome, was born of a Vestal virgin. Plato was claimed to be the virgin son of Apollo, and so on. So this is kind of a common thing, ho-hum, right? Yeah. So let's take a look at this evidence a little bit more. We have, we have this Bible story is really the only story that's promoting this, and we can kind of look at that a little bit. We know quite a bit about biblical history. We know when the various Gospels were written, approximately, what we find is rather interesting. We have, in the earliest epistles of Paul, the letters of Paul, this is sort of the earliest writings, which is dated around 51 to 64 AD or CE, Common Era. I should mention here that Paul never met Jesus. He, in fact, none of the people who wrote actually knew Jesus firsthand. So it's all sort of hearsay. Okay. And in these epistles, in Galatians 4:4, Paul is said that Jesus was a son born of woman and born under the law. Okay, and what this really means is this is him sort of capitulating on the spirituality thing, or the spiritual being thing. Is he's saying, well, Jesus actually existed in human form, is what's being said here, not that there's a virgin birth. And he's sort of saying also that he's born under the law, meaning that he's not an illegitimate child. Okay. So
what was the implication before that?
Well, you see, if you have this virgin birth, if you have this woman who doesn't know who the daddy is, then the child is potentially illegitimate, right? So that's a problem.
So right? God is running around cheating on people?
No. Well, actually, let me continue here. In Romans chapter 1, verse 3, we have Jesus Christ our Lord, which is made from the seed of David according to the flesh. and then declared to be the Son of God. So, as it turns out, what's going on here is there's a lot of the myth surrounding Jesus is actually trying to make him one of the descendants of the Davidic line. So they go to great pains to construct this myth, and then everybody forgets it and says, "Oh, virgin birth." Paul is trying to make the point that Jesus was a descendant of David and therefore is a supposed ruler, and to try to resurrect that sort of problem, or to try to fix that sort of problem. But what's interesting here is in Paul's epistles, which is the earliest writings about Jesus, he mentions nothing of the virgin birth. There's nothing mentioned about Jesus' supposed works or any of this these magic that supposedly went on. And Paul's sort of job, if you will, was being a missionary, right? And if he had this wonderful story, why would he not promote it? Why would he not try to say something about it? So that, and then later on we have the Gospel according to Mark, which is dated around 70, and there's no mention of the birth at all. So if it were kind of an unusual birth, you'd think it might be at least mentioned, right?
More as a footnote, if nothing else.
Yeah, just hey-ho, virgin birth or something, right? So Mark didn't mention that at all, and in fact, in Mark, he has Jesus' family kind of thinking he's kind of nuts for preaching, which, if I had a kid that was, was
supposedly the Son of God,
a semigod, a demigod, I'd kind of cut him a little slack. So they thought he was nuts. In Matthew, we have this association of the virgin birth, and a reference to Isaiah, which is another little interesting thing, which I think we can get into maybe a little later. And it turns out that Luke is based on Matthew. Biblical scholars think that Luke, basically borrowed a lot of the elements of Matthew and added to it and such. So there's not much there. These two Gospels, Matthew and Luke, go to great pains to outline this lineage from King David, right? And unfortunately, they have very different lineages. One in Matthew, they trace Jesus to David in 28 generations. In Luke, it's 41 generations. So that, they don't quite have their story straight between them. But I think the big point here is if you can't have Jesus being the descendant of David and a virgin birth from God at the same time. Those are two mutually incompatible notions. Yeah. They have nothing to do with each other. So, which version of this myth do you really want to have? So, then in the Gospel of John, they actually kind of more or less explicitly deny this virgin birth story. They actually kind of, you have to read between the lines a little bit to sort of say that so Jesus is sort of denying this story about himself. He's being presented with this story, and he basically says no. So
it's kind of some bickering as into what's more important. Is it actually the Son of God, or is it David's descendant?
Right.
Which is more important?
Right. So there's a definite tug of war here going on. So there's some other problems. The Encyclopedia Britannica says that Christians count 133 contrary notions of different authorities concerning the year the Messiah appeared on the earth. So there's 133 different versions of when Jesus was born.
Wow.
Talk about not getting your story straight, right? So that's pretty sad. The birthplace of Jesus is another interesting deal. We have Jesus of Nazareth, and we have Jesus born in Bethlehem. Well, the Bethlehem part is because there was some sort of prophecy about the Davidic line being carried through a Messiah who would be born in Bethlehem. So they took great pains to have him born in Bethlehem. But then Jesus is supposedly from Nazareth, and then they had to kind of patch that up by having them roam around because of a census. Yeah. A nine-month pregnancy woman running around the countryside. We have the missing 30 years of Jesus' life. So basically, from his birth to the time when he starts to do the Sermon on the Mount, and the parts that were contained in the movie, the Passion of the Christ.
Okay.
We basically have no or almost no stories about Jesus. So if he was such an important person, you'd think there'd be a little chronicling of what happened in his youth and adolescence, but there's nothing there. There's a lot of confusion about the resurrection story, but I won't go into that now. So maybe what we can do now is mention that we are a live call show and give out the phone number, and then until we get some callers, I can talk about something else. Okay. Related here.
Yep. Like I say, this is Sunday. We are live today. Again, if you want to call in, ask any questions, got anything to say or add to this, you can definitely go ahead and give us a call, and we'll get you on the air. Phone number is on your screens now. Go ahead and give us a call, and like I said, we'll see what we can do.
Boy. You're a miracle worker. We got callers already. What do you know? So maybe we can take a few callers, and then I can present some more stuff that I have here.
Well, let's go on for a minute until we get some names up. So.
Okay.
So.
Oh yeah, that's right. They have to. So we have this myth problem, right? And we have Christianity. We got this conflict between thou shalt not bear false witness, and Christianity being founded on a myth. And I would love one of the callers to call in and tell me how they reconcile those two things. How they say, on the one hand, we don't want to lie. It's a bad thing to lie.
Of course.
How can and then the other hand, Christianity being sort of based on this myth. And
yeah. So basically, the idea is that there are lots and lots of precursors to Christ. Other gods and other prophets and other deities that had supposedly come before him, that are exactly the same. Virgin birth, December 25th, 12 apostles.
Right, right. In fact, people have made the case that there's nothing there except stories that came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
That all of the episodes of Jesus' life were and this is one of the books that does that. By the way, there are many books that do this, but this is called The Jesus Puzzle. By Earl Doherty, and anyway, this is a good read. I recommend checking that out. There are lots of books that have the similar sort of take on the subject.
Okay.
So,
all right. So yeah, I mean, apart from there being 35 different gods that came before Jesus that shared the same story, there being no evidence outside of the Bible to back up Jesus' character. The evidence within the Bible is contradictory.
Right.
To the order of 133.
Yeah. Well, in fact, they're working very hard to promote another story, for this Davidic line thing, and that. Yeah. So it's kind of ironic in a way that this other myth that they've so carefully constructed didn't even make the marquee.
So good. All that, and the lack of any physical evidence for any godlike activity going on.
Right.
It's most likely a myth.
Yeah, so it's pretty amazing why people believe that. So, how can you trust the church when they're telling you these lies?
Well, there's something you don't learn in Sunday school.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
All right. We are still working on getting some names up for the callers, but like I said, we are working on that. We'll get to you in just a couple of minutes. Just hang on the line. So. All right. I guess that's about all we have. We did have that one quick story that we could just say really quickly about the mother. This has been in the news for the last couple days now, who had got a message from God that the world's about to end, and to get her house in order, and getting her house in order include killing her kids. I believe it was two of them, Luke and I can't remember the names offhand, but yeah, she actually killed two of her kids, and
8-year-old Joshua and 6-year-old Luke. This is in today's paper, by the way, in the Statesman, if you'd like to read up on it.
And then she severely injured the last one, I think a 14-month-old, I want to say.
Right.
To where he'll never be able to live on his own. He's going to have speech problems, stuff like that for the rest of his life. So.
And she used the biblical mechanism of stoning,
exactly,
crushing their skulls with a stone. So,
exactly.
And there's a lot of.
Like I say, it's one of these things where if your worldview, you have to base it on something that can actually be tested and run. If you base it on faith of any kind, it opens the door to bad ideas getting in. Now, obviously, this is not something that happens to everybody. It's a terrible thing to happen. It's very, very rare. But if you're going to base your worldview on just faith and no real evidence to back it up, again, strange things can happen. So that's definitely something to be careful of.
Right, right. And there's this precedent of the story of Abraham, who was told by God to kill his son Isaac, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
He wasn't exalted because he deceived God and not killing his child. He was exalted because he was more than willing to go through with it, and
Exactly.
Here we have a very sort of evil thing being held up as sort of this wonderful thing that Abraham did. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can go ahead and take some callers now.
Okay.
Let's see. First off, we have Todd. How you doing?
Fine. How you doing?
Pretty well.
Good. I'm listening at your supposedly expert. I don't know whether his expertise is from a book that he read or he's an expert on myths. He's researched the life of Christ. He's just talking. I saw the book that he held up.
Okay.
He knows very little about the Bible, so I guess he's basing what he saying on the writings of others. For an example, the idea that Abraham did this evil thing. If he had read the Bible, then he would be assured that Abraham followed God's advice, and he would have, but God did not allow him to. And God was testing his faith.
Okay.
No. The point I was making is that he would have gone through with it.
Yeah.
He wasn't saying, "Oh, I'm going to deceive this God and not kill my kid, who I love very much." That wasn't the point. The point was that he loved God more than his child. That was the whole point of the story.
Yes, but no, the whole point of the story is that, as Abraham said, that he trusted in God, and he knew that if he had slain his son, that God, who gave life at the beginning, could raise him back. But God, after testing him, didn't feel it was necessary. He provided a sacrifice, and
so that makes it all better.
So that makes it better?
Sure it does. He didn't kill his son like you alleged.
But why would a loving God demand that you sacrifice your son, even if he's going to pull that back at the last minute and say, "Okay, I was just kidding anyway"?
Sounds pretty evil.
You're saying that he sacrificed his son, and he didn't. It was a test, and he passed the test. There was no reason to sacrifice his son. So what I'm saying is, this fellow here.
I think you've twisted my words, but.
What's your name, Don Baker?
My name is Don Baker.
What is your expertise? What is your degree? What do you know about the Bible, other than what you've read?
Well, reading it kind of helps typically.
Yeah, but I mean, apparently he hasn't read the Bible, because...
Well, I've read the sections of the Bible that I quoted.
First of all,
do you debate anything?
That the life of Christ is a myth when it's a historical fact.
Okay, what evidence do you have of this fact? What evidence do you have of this fact?
Historically, it's mentioned in Josephus.
Yeah, which is a fraud.
Wait a minute. You asked me a question. Let me answer your question.
Okay, and point by point, Josephus is one passage in the writings that it's just kind of stuck in amongst other things that he was writing. It doesn't really flow. It doesn't fit. It's written in a different way, and pretty much every historical scholar, biblical scholar, has said that it's a forgery. It was put in there much later.
People lie. You know, there were 500 people that saw Jesus.
Okay, what evidence do we have of these 500 people?
Wait a minute. You asked me a question.
Okay, so what is the evidence of these 500 people? Point two.
If you give me a chance, I'll answer your question. If you keep talking, then we'll just be arguing.
Okay. Well, go on.
After Christ was resurrected, there were 500 people that saw him at once.
Okay.
And there were a lot of them living during the time of Paul. Paul even saw him.
Okay, but no. Wait a second. You said 500 people saw him.
Yes.
What evidence do we have of that? Other than a story, other than it written here.
Yes.
What evidence do we have?
That's all the evidence you need.
That's one book.
That's all you need. You said that
they have Harry Potter books written out there.
You said first of all, you said it was a myth, but then you turn around and said, well, there's an account of this in just about every nation or tradition or what did
No, there isn't. No, no.
Well, I want
There are other gods.
Let's not be speaking very clearly, because I've apparently been very misunderstood.
Talking about the virgin birth, and he's talking about in other.
There were lots and lots of other gods in centuries before and prophets centuries before that were born of virgins.
Okay,
that
now name one. Name one.
Mithra.
Okay, Mithra.
Mithra, when was he born?
It was a couple centuries before, but on what we can nail down, December 25th.
Oh, okay. So Mithra, this god supposedly Mithra.
Yes.
And did you say this is a myth?
Well, I believe that's a myth too, but apparently everybody else does too. Nobody worships Mithra anymore.
Yeah, but Mithra. Well, I've never heard of Mithra other than probably in some book, God-denying book like you've read.
Yeah, if you do some searches, they come up with
people
information
go
on
around digging in holes and things, and they come up with all of these false gods. Mithra may have been a god.
So what evidence do you have that your God is not a false one, just like Mithra?
I've just told you, because he's living today. He was resurrected and seen of about 500
He's
people.
not making the news anywhere.
It doesn't make any difference as it make the news.
Well, it does kind of make a difference if you say he's walking around.
Wait a minute. He was seen by people that committed their life to him, that he stayed on earth 40 days after he was resurrected.
Again,
and
evidence.
In order to quiet people like you who are God-denying people.
Again,
but,
evidence.
Okay. I told you the evidence.
Anything outside of this book, anything other than one book.
There does not need to be anything other than that book.
Okay,
do you have any evidence of the virgin birth,
that
which is
guy
what we're
that wrote
focusing
that
on?
other book is probably an atheist like you, and you're not going to realize that God exists until you face him, on your way to that place.
Okay, so back to the threats.
Yeah.
Back to the threats.
Well, it's a fact. It's not a threat. It's true.
Okay, well, that's what you say, but you have failed to give us any shred of evidence, and he hung up on us, so goodbye. Again, offered absolutely no evidence for things other than, well, the book says so. Mm-hmm. So what? Books say lots of things. Unless you have something to back up what's said in the book, some physical evidence, some other documents that back up these things,
well,
then
and one of the points I made is that the book makes a big point of trying to say that he's descended from David, and by they have these long lineages, and when you start having other fathers involved, that's not what they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about, adoption. We're not talking about,
Exactly.
Anyway, so his book is making other claims as well. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was actually Don. He's called into the show lots and lots of times before. But anyway, we can go on to, let's see, we have James. How you doing?
I'm doing great, sir. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. What you got for us?
I want to discuss about the myth of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
The thing is that what the other guy is saying is that there is evidence of 500 people in the Bible.
Okay, but again, do we have any writings of those 500 people outside of the Bible? Do we have any other writings or anything like that?
No, there is not, sir. There's only the Bible that has this shred of evidence that has to do with the existence of Jesus Christ himself.
Okay, but again, it's only in one book that we have any evidence, that we have anything written down. We don't have any other documents out there from that time period saying, here's just somebody who was walking down the street and holy cow, I saw Jesus after I saw him up on the cross and he died. We don't have any other things backing it up, either physical evidence or outside writings by, completely different people to back it up. So since we only have one account of it, it's not all that
compelling.
It's not something you can rely on.
So are you trying to tell me that you're throwing in paganistic garbage of Harry Potter that you believe, which is the wrong way?
Harry Potter is a book just like the Bible.
No, it's not.
Okay, why not?
Because the other religions you're talking about is false.
Okay, what evidence do you have that yours is not false?
Because I know
they had books too.
The experience of Jesus Christ
Okay. They had experiences with Mithraism and Zoroastro and Buddha and Allah and Thor and Odin. They had deep felt experiences with them too.
So you're trying to tell me that he's throwing in witchcraft as long as well with the others?
Again, if you don't have any evidence to back up your beliefs, and it's just
only
your
the
feelings.
Bible.
Okay, but again, it's a book.
No, it's not just a book. It's a book of the life and the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Okay, but again, evidence of that. We have books that say, here's the life and times of Ben Franklin, but we have other books, other writings completely outside of that one book that explain the same things.
No, it doesn't.
We have papers that have Ben Franklin's name on it, things that he wrote. We have other,
You have eyewitness accounts of Ben Franklin.
Exactly. We have lots and lots of different pieces of evidence out there to back up this idea that Ben Franklin was actually walking around doing stuff.
Well,
we only have one of Jesus.
But
one.
back then, they didn't have anything to write on. They didn't have any other ways or tape recorder of recording that event.
So then why should we believe any
There were
of it
historians in the time of Jesus.
Yeah, there were historians back then.
And the silence of those historians of the supposed Son of God and magical person is quite deafening. The silence is deafening.
Yeah, I mean there are writings from the time on other things that were going on in the world, not just this one. So there were other things going on at the time that we have writings for. None of them mention Jesus.
Are you kidding me? Are you guys a bunch of liars?
That you actually, we're pointing out other lies.
Yeah,
that's what we're doing here today.
Yeah.
I believe that you guys are going to die one of these days.
So do we.
And the final judgment is going to say whether or not if you live or you die.
Okay, so again, are we back to the threats, believe or burn?
Well, it's not just a threat, it is a fact.
Okay, but again, just like the last call, evidence of facts. Do we have anything to back up your facts? Other than, again, one book, which I can bring in, Harry Potter, Alice in Wonderland, anything next week if you want.
Are you a paganistic pig?
Goodbye.
Yeah, that was going downhill.
So, okay, well, if that's what you're going to do to back up your arguments, well, sorry. We demand a little bit more, so...
Yeah, and we talked about Ben Franklin a little bit. Well, pretty much everything that he did was rather kind of ordinary. He was a remarkable man. He was, insightful, a brilliant man.
But he never walked on water.
He never, walked on water. He never, raised the dead, or he never, all this stuff. And again, we need to say that if you're going to make an extraordinary claim, you have to have extraordinary evidence to back that up.
Exactly. All right, let's go on to John. How you doing?
How are you guys doing?
Fine, how are you?
Okay, y'all want evidence.
Please.
The drought of 38 that started, the drought of 38 culminated in the drought of 71. There was poverty, the agrarian system, and at the time there was blood sacrifice, right? And the blood sacrifice was all along the polytheistic systems. The polytheistic matriarchy and the polytheistic patriarchy, they demanded blood sacrifice. So if you did something wrong, you had to sacrifice. Oh, come in and sacrifice a dove.
Which
by the
culture
way,
are you talking about?
Yeah, which...
Can you set the context a little better?
Okay, very good. And so what happened is Jesus, or let's just not say Jesus, let's just say that person or those people, they said, let's do a symbolic sacrifice. And what that did was that pretty much put the animal sacrifice industry on its ears, because here comes a bunch of people going, well, wait a minute, you mean we're just going to be a symbolic sacrifice to this person?
So from my understanding, I think what you're getting, and I've heard this before, I think in the Old Testament there's a lot of stuff saying that to be a good person, you must sacrifice your goat once a month or something like that to God.
Right.
When Jesus came along, then you don't have to make the goat sacrifice because Jesus kind of takes care of all that stuff.
And it goes into a symbolic thing. That's why he said, that's why he came up, or supposedly the word is, that's why he came up and said, break bread, drink wine. He might have been a bread salesman.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but again, going back to What were you talking about earlier about the drought, though? I kind of
missed the drought, because people were getting poorer and poorer, and the religious oppression back then by the Sadducees and the Pharisees was so great that they were extracting the firstborn sons. If you did something wrong, they would take your children away.
So you're saying God did this because there was an economic downturn?
No, I'm not bringing God into the scene at all. So what it is, the people themselves, it's a wave, an idea. The people themselves picked up this idea, well, let's do this softer, gentler kind of religion.
So you're saying the people got sick of giving up their goats every week?
They got, no, they were too, well, they were
and their
too poor.
children,
and they had to give away their kids, too. So here comes this big movement, these, what was it, those hippies, those revolutionaries. So the revolutionaries came in and said, we're not going to do it your way anymore. And for 300 years, the industry, the animal sacrifice industry, and they were also anti-slavers. So that the slave industry and the animal sacrifice industry was constantly trying to bombard them. After Jesus passed away, let's just say, in whatever it was, whatever that person was, that the Sasanians took over. The Sasanians and all the blood sacrifice and the slavers took over all that. And then when Constantine came along, and Constantine burned all the light. When you talk about where's the evidence, Constantine and the Catholic Church, the Roman Empire, burned all the libraries. The Library of Alexandria burned for 3 months.
So you're saying that there could have been other evidence, but it's been destroyed since then.
It's horrible. But right now there was a movement, that started just before Jesus died, whether it was Jesus or not. That wasn't his name, and that was the deal. It wasn't his name. And when they talk about, they label him the King of Kings, there's only one, and let's just take that just in case if it's right or if it's wrong. The King of Kings was only given to the kings of Parthia. And the king of Parthia was the people down in Iraq, Iran, that kind of area where Moses, south of where Moses was coming from. So the King of Kings of Parthia at that time, there were the King of Kings in Parthia, and the Roman emperor was killing all the sons of the king of Parthia. He killed 60 of them in 2 B.C. That's physical evidence. 2 B.C. So that these guys came along, and they were basically a bunch of young upstarts that wanted to start another religion. The history of Mithras, there was no Mithras. These archaeologists come along and they want to deify everything. They come along, and if they saw McDonald's, they would say, oh, it must have been St. McDonald because everybody comes and worships, and that's just ridiculous. Mithras was a place where people studied the cosmos in order to do their navigating through the desert and navigating because of the Phoenicians and the Greeks and all the others. So there was no Phoenician. Where Jesus' thing came from was the Zoroastrians. The Zoroastrian was a religion of 1,000-year savior. Every 1,000 years there'd be a savior. So it was the savior religion. So there's these melts. As far as Jesus in particular, I don't know, we don't know, but there was one other thing. If you were to strike a temple in Rome and Parthia and Egypt or anywhere, you had 3 days to live and you will die. I mean, not you, but watch your pronouns. One would die if they struck the temple. So Jesus knew, hey, he was going to go. If he's going to go, he breaks the bread, breaks the wine, and says, hey, guys, let's just do something. I am the last sacrifice. I'll be that lamb. This is it. And everybody jumped on board. And everybody that didn't jump on board, said, hey, you got to go this. And then, the way the zealots and kill all them Christians, kill all them Christians for 300 years. So basically, whether that was his name or not, religious oppression was pretty much, it was aggravated, let's say. It was almost destroyed, except for when Constantine came along and he decided to do his little hooga booga wooga wooga.
I think we're gonna stop you there.
You've got you've got some stuff there that I'll have to do some looking up on that and see what I can find out.
Look up Irenaeus, and you'll see the breakup of the East and Western Christian Church, and how the Catholic Church pretty much destroyed what Jesus was. Every prophet, they destroyed their message. All right.
Thanks a lot,
guys.
for calling.
Thank you.
You bet. Bye.
Yeah, I think one of the points that he made that's very valid is that there's a big mixture of cultures going on at that time. So Lots of elements coming in and playing. So.
And again, that whole, they have the book, Who Wrote the Bible, which I haven't read the entire thing, but from my understanding, they had one version of the creation of the world and, you know, the beginning of the Bible, basically. And then when that region split into two different kingdoms, they each used that same myth, that same creation story, but to make theirs the right one, they had to change it a little bit. Switch some things around, put some new elements in there that wasn't there before, to make theirs different than the other one. So you could say, look, ours is right, theirs is different, that's wrong.
To create an enemy, huh?
Exactly. And then when they came back together again, they've now got these two different stories that they have to integrate, and that's why we have the two different creation myths that are different orderings and stuff like that. And that's why there's a lot of different contradictions at the beginning of the Bible, because again, they're trying to take two different stories, and instead of just ditching one and keeping the other, they kind of try and figure out how to integrate the two, and it, well, kind of doesn't work.
Right,
so.
right.
All right, let's go on to, not John apparently, Rick, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, not too bad. What you got for us?
To ask you a couple of questions. I don't desire to start up any huge argument.
Okay.
But, you know, you were talking about how can you prove this and that. Well, let me ask you guys, and this is a pretty easy question here. Who was the first president of the United States?
George Washington.
And how do we know that?
Historical evidence. We have, again, eyewitness accounts. We have documentation through history, that type of thing.
Do you know anyone alive today, friend, relative, that knew him?
Of course not. But we don't require living people to give evidence.
We don't?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of a contradiction to what you're making with the Bible, but...
Why is that?
Well, you said, you know, we need some evidence.
Yeah, I mean, we have lots of different accounts. Again, this goes back to two different things here. One, we have lots of separate accounts of George Washington versus only really one of Jesus. And two, George Washington was just a man. He didn't do anything really all that extraordinary.
True.
I mean, historically, he's a very important figure, obviously, but he never turned water into wine. He never raised the dead. If you're going to make claims that are so extraordinary along those lines, there's going to have to be some extra evidence to back that up. Again, I can concede that possibly, I haven't looked into it all that much, that there was somebody named Jesus walking around at that time saying some of these things.
See, that's my only point, actually. I didn't make any extraordinary claims.
Okay.
All I was saying was that we know that George Washington was here because it was written down. You yourself said, hey, I don't know anyone personally that knew him, but obviously he was here because it was written down. There were eyewitnesses. Well,
there were lots of them.
The same case can be made for the Bible. Now, you say there's only one book.
Yeah.
However, let me give you some facts. You may want to write this down.
Okay.
There are 24,000 portions of the New Testament in existence. 5,300 Greek manuscripts, 10,000 Latin, 9,300 other manuscripts.
Yeah.
No,
do you know what the second...
There's billions of copies of the Bible. Does that make it more true?
No. I'm talking about portions of the Bible that piece it together here. Now, what would you say is the next most written about book in the history of mankind? Do you know?
Don't know.
Homer's Iliad.
Okay.
I'm sure you've heard of that, correct?
Yeah.
Do you know how many extant manuscripts there are of Homer's Iliad?
Nope.
643.
Okay.
Verse over 24,000 portions of the New Testament alone. I'm not even talking about the Old Testament.
Okay.
So, you know, you say one book, yes, that is true, but there's a lot of portions that go together to make that one book. Now, and this is an interesting fact that you'll probably enjoy. There are at least 17 non-Christian writings. 17 non-Christian writings talking about Jesus, talking about the resurrection, talking about the death, so forth and so on.
Okay.
That's non-Christian writings, and you can write this name down, R.T. France, F-R-A-N-C-E. Go do an internet search of him.
Okay. R.T. France?
R.T. France.
Like the country?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
He's one of the guys that wrote about it.
Okay.
Now, if you don't believe in God, that's fine. It is completely up to you for what you believe, and I respect that.
Okay.
And again, I'm not saying, hey, you should believe like I should believe.
Yeah.
Because everyone should be able to believe what they want to believe, but let me ask you this. Now, you believe there's no God, correct? That's what an atheist is, correct?
It's lack of a belief in a God versus belief that there is none. It's to put this in another way, I'm saying I haven't seen any evidence of unicorns, so I don't think they're out there. versus there are no unicorns and I can prove it.
But there could be a unicorn, correct?
There could be,
There's a
but
possibility.
and as soon as I see some evidence for it, I'll
Sure.
I'll look at that evidence, possibly change my mind.
Extraordinary evidence.
But you're saying that there is a possibility. Now, I personally don't believe in unicorns either.
Okay.
But you say that there's a possibility.
Yeah.
I'm not even saying whether I'm a Christian or not, but I'm saying, you know what, there's a possibility, at least a possibility, that everything written about Jesus was true. You have to agree there's at least a possibility.
Well, wait a minute here. I just went through the virgin birth story, and there's so many different conflicts, so many different versions, and they all conflict with each other. So, are you saying that we just sort of get to pick one and say, oh, this one sounds very juicy, we're going to choose that one?
No, Don, I'm not saying anything like that. I'm saying you have to say that there's at least a possibility. Again, you know what? I may agree with you guys, but I have to say, at least being smart, articulate, whatever you want to call it, that, hey, there's at least a possibility. There's a possibility that there's a UFO out there.
Yeah, there's a possibility, but without good evidence to back it up, there's no point to believing it.
Right, so why waste your time?
You definitely have a valid
We can make up all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, we could make up a lot of possibilities.
Sure, we could.
It's not a profitable enterprise. Unless you're trying to sell the myth, I guess.
And
my point is that there is a possibility. Would you agree?
Yes, and if you go with the idea that there's a possibility that there are unicorns, I would agree with that.
Sure.
But again, unicorn is just a natural animal.
Sure.
You know, there could be, a horse out there with a horn going out its forehead.
Correct.
Unlikely, but it's possible.
Now, there's also
the idea that there is an infinitely powerful, creator of the universe who created everybody and loves me and really is concerned about my sex life. That one I'm not too sure on.
Sure.
That requires a lot more evidence.
That doesn't exist. Wouldn't you agree, Ashley?
I would what? I'm sorry?
There's a possibility that does not exist. Wouldn't you agree?
I would say that there's a large possibility that it doesn't, but...
Correct. And you know what? We'll never know until it's all done.
Okay.
And then at that point, it becomes a gamble. So I guess, again,
but that's Pascal's wager.
I'm not saying that I agree with you guys, that I disagree with you guys. I'm just, for conversation's sake, I'm saying there is a possibility.
Okay, so you're saying it's safer.
And excuse me?
Are you saying it's safer then to believe versus not believe?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Okay.
I just made the point that there is a possibility, which you guys agreed with. But let me ask you this as well. If there is no God, then that would mean that there probably shouldn't be any moral rules or anything like that, correct?
No, we have developed rules for how to behave in society and how we should live together.
But where do we get those rules?
Because we grew up in society, because we have to live together.
Where did society get those rules?
From living together. I realize that if I'm living with other people in the world, that it works out better if I don't steal their stuff, if I don't kill them. It makes life easier if we work together to do things, rather than just everybody purely, this is my own sake, I'm going to steal your car because...
in other words, humans came up with the rules.
Yes.
We just said, hey, this is better, that's better, but we could do anything we want.
Well,
because
because things would go bad.
Can I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
Do you have any evidence or anything more than I've talked about as far as the virgin birth story?
I didn't catch your program at that point. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh, okay. Okay, I was refuting the virgin birth and calling that a myth, and I guess you're just sort of giving us some general questions, then, and you're not responding to the earlier presentation. Is that what's going on?
Well, I don't know. Again,
which is fine. This is
earlier presentation.
Yeah. So that's fine.
We're not specifically on that show. We don't have to be directly on topic, but
sure. I just caught the portion where you were saying there's only one Bible, and there's no manuscripts that back that up. Which I happen to be a little bit of a historian, and know quite a bit about church history.
All right.
And it's very obvious to me that y'all haven't studied a lot on church history.
Okay.
And again, I'm not saying that I disagree with y'all. You have some valid points, and that's fantastic.
Okay.
I just think,
and
everyone
again,
has the right to believe what they want to believe.
Yeah.
And if there is no God, then hey, why don't we do whatever we want to do?
Because it sucks for everybody else.
I know, but still,
and me. Because if I go and kill somebody, because if I don't like my car and I decide to go steal somebody else's because theirs is cooler, chances are they're going to try and come back and take it back.
But it doesn't matter.
It does matter because I don't want to get thumbed.
Result, it doesn't matter.
What is that?
If there's no end result to anything, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it matters because tomorrow
the society we our very participation in this society depends on cooperation.
Exactly. There are consequences. They may not.
If I go out and kill people, I'm gonna be considered a sort of a bad guy, and they're gonna lock me up. It's very simple.
Exactly. I'm not holding myself accountable because I may die and go to hell because of some infinite being that cares. I'm accountable to my neighbors and my friends and my family.
The society.
They're the real people who could actually come back and make my life really, really hard if I don't do the right thing. That's who I'm accountable to, and they I can actually prove exist. Versus God, which, again, could be out there, could be not.
Guys, you haven't done that much research. I mean, I went to the University of Texas.
Regardless of evidence, not regardless of evidence.
You gotta have evidence. That's what you're mad about.
Exactly.
People don't have evidence.
Yeah. But evidence of the Bible, again, even if you could prove that there was a person called Jesus, it doesn't prove any of the supernatural claims. There are still moral and logical problems
because we weren't
with the idea of God.
It's the same thing that I was talking about George Washington. We can't prove that he did anything other than what was written down. It's the same argument, guys.
Yeah, but again, that's a very natural claim. He didn't walk on water. He didn't raise the dead.
It was said that he missed, or 19 bullets or so missed him.
Okay.
In a couple of wars. How do we know that? It was written down.
Again, if there's stories written down, then maybe we can go on that. But again, chances are there's some stuff inflated also, which is why we can look at these stories and say, okay, that one probably not real.
Yeah, there are definitely chances. There's always chances. There's always possibilities.
Yeah. So is the Bible inerrant? Is that what you're saying? That the Bible is the best quality evidence that we have?
Of everything put together, it's said that about 400 words of the entire Bible are not accurate, which is less than half of 1%. Now,
okay.
Gilead, which
I mentioned maybe about eight or so contradictions earlier in the show, and so I'm
there's a lot more than 400 words worth of contradictions in the Bible.
That's an optimistic estimate. Let's put it that way.
I didn't catch them, unfortunately. Maybe we can email back and forth and just have a good
debate
about it.
By all means, maybe our folks can put up the email address for us.
Yeah.
We'll have a good old time debate. I just like to debate with people on this and that.
Yeah.
Not saying you're wrong, not saying I'm right.
Well, for you and for any other viewers, we do have our email address, tv@atheist-community.org. If you have any suggestions, feedback for the show, you can go ahead and write us there, and if it's something good, we'll bring it on the air.
But guys, help me understand one thing.
Excuse me.
Because you kind of confused me a little bit earlier.
All right.
Now, when you say you're an atheist, does that mean that you don't believe in any God whatsoever, period? Nothing?
No.
You believe...
Depends on your definition of God, but for the most common definitions, yes.
Yeah, the notion of a deist God that created the universe and then went off and did something else. He abandoned it and wandered away, this sort of absentee landlord God. No one can prove that one way or the other. But this Christian notion of a God that is omnipotent, omnibenevolent, and what's the third one? Omniscient. Those three qualities are mutually exclusive, and this gets to the problem of evil. How can you have a God that has these wonderful properties and there's still evil in the world? So
it would be real. I can answer that question very easily.
All right, please do.
Well, we have a minute and a half left, so
you know what?
Quick answer.
The God that we're arguing about.
Okay.
If we were to eradicate all the evil in this entire world,
okay,
where would you guys be? Y'all have to get smoked out too. So would I, because you know what? There's evil in us. And I don't know y'all. You're probably great guys. You probably don't. You probably pay your taxes.
So again, going back to
stuff. You're good to your neighbors and all of that. But guess what?
You're still saying that you deserve to burn for all eternity.
I'm not saying anything about burning for eternity. I'm saying if we wanted to get rid of evil in this world, if God wanted to get rid of evil in this world, the God that's described,
he would have waved his hand and done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could. He'd have to eradicate everyone. Where would I be? Where would y'all be?
But we're his creation, so he
created us faulty.
So I guess he created evil too. Huh?
But guys, y'all need
All right, we have to break off. We have to kind of wrap up our show. Sorry.
I got a great question for you if you can hold on one more second.
We don't have time.
We have 30
Sorry.
seconds left. TV at atheist-community.org. Right, it's there. And that goes for any other callers that are holding on the line. Sorry we didn't get to you.
Yeah, we had a short show today, so we're having to wrap up. Sorry.
So, everybody, thanks for watching. It was a great show. Thank you very much, John, for coming on.
My
and
pleasure.
Helping out. And
we had a lively show.
Everyone have a great week. And Christians, we don't hate you. We